Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Teach Me to Sports Bet, where I tap into my friend, colleague, and veteran sports broadcaster, Dave's wealth of information for all things sports betting. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Kimmy, great to see you again.
So it's always, well, first of all, it's always good to see you. And I want to say I have a little bit of a confession to make because when I was making the last part of my video where I was going to place my bets, there was so much overwhelming information, and I'm looking at the spreads and I'm looking at the risk and the reward, and everybody was sort of not, to me, it didn't seem like anybody had a good feel of what this first weekend was going to turn out like. And so I decided not to bet. And I felt like I was copying out a little bit, like people want to see me bet and what a new bettor might bet, but to me, it just didn't feel right, so I didn't.
Well, and you didn't, and you shouldn't. That was a good non-move. A good non-bet is better than a bad actual bet. Remember, this is your bankroll we're talking about for the course of the season, and therefore you are even, in theory, after week one because you didn't make a bet on something you didn't love. Now, we made that point last week. Bet what you love. You've seen it in poker, as has our buddy Jessica Wellman. When you've been in these tournaments and you get a couple cards, you don't like them right away, you make an instant decision. There's no action here. So you decided there was no action, and I think that was a good play. At the racetrack, we call that waiting a race to see how the track plays, whether it's a fast track or one that allows for ralliers. I think it was good to tiptoe in. Plus, there was no preseason in the NFL this year. So really, everybody was stabbing. And guess what, Kimmy? I didn't hear anybody telling me they made a lot of money this week.
I was taking my fandom out of it. So I was trying not to bet on emotion, but to bet on, what I had in front of me, information, which wasn't a lot.
Well, the thing about the information is, see, you can see the information and it's published and somebody says this and somebody gives you a statistic. But when you bet, it's what you feel about these numbers. You still have to interpret them. And there really wasn't as much to interpret this time because of the no preseason. So I think it was a good decision. Now, take a look at, for DraftKings, 85% of their bettors in the Washington football team Philadelphia Eagles game bet 85% with the Eagles. So they lost, and that was with the Eagles giving 6 points. On our show last week, what did we talk about? About minus 278 for the Eagles on this money line, in Washington with an opportunity there. So they won. But the majority of people were wrong. And on the Indianapolis Colts, they were an 8-point favorite. They lost the game outright. So everybody that bet, it was hard to do it with conviction, and there's nothing wrong with the sidelines for week one.
As you know, what happened after Thursday was DraftKings came out with a new promo for bettors. Bet $1, win $100 if you pick the winning team. So I thought, okay, how bad could that be, right? So I decided to deposit money, and I got all sorts of bonuses. I deposited through our link, and I will include that link down below for anybody else that wants to take a gander at that. So I got, not only was I able to bet the $1 and win $100, I bet that on the Baltimore Ravens because I felt like that was close to the surest thing. So yay, I did that. But also because I signed up through our link, I got 5 free $5 bets. And I have 30 days to use them, but I took one of those $5 and bet it on my Cardinals because
Yes.
I felt like a lot of people were saying that this contest was going to be close, and it was. And I was really happy. So there was I got it Cardinals plus 6.5 is what I put the bet on. And then I won that. So I won $9.55 or plus $4.55 on that bet. So I was really excited about that. And then I also, because of the deposit, I got a 20% bonus on my deposit. And I also have one risk-free bet that I can make up to $500. That sounds like a lot of money to bet on one bet, so I probably won't do that. But I can also make another bet, and if I don't win the bet, I get my bet back. Now, there are playthrough requirements and stuff like that. I realize this is not all just money going into my account that I can withdraw today. But if I'm working to build my bankroll, I can look at it that way, and I think it was really sort of exciting.
It is exciting. There are a lot of great things about that. Number one, you can hit big for that promotion that came out. And then the other thing is, there's a part of our gambling self that just loves the impulsive nature of, I want to take a shot on something that's 20 to 1, 30 to 1, but I don't want to impact my bankroll. Well, with one of those $5 bets, you might take a shot at something like that. We talked last week in the story for Play West Virginia about how a craps player loves to play the high-low with 29 to 1 odds. Take a stand, because that's where the fun is. We talk about discipline a lot on this because it's necessary, but what brought you to this in the first place was the fun. And you're already having fun with the Cardinals, and I'm glad you bet them because you talked about them last week. I bet them too. I waited, I got 7 on Sunday because the line was moving in that direction with a lot of bettors. So that's great. Congratulations on already being ahead. You're 2 for 2. You won the Derby and you won football already.
I will say I'm very happy to see you wearing my Cardinal colors.
We are in tandem. It's Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins this year for Arizona Cardinals fans and bettors. That's a formidable combination. I love that team, and we're going to talk about Kyler in another part of a theme from last week. He's a great quarterback.
My impressions of last week were, I wasn't very impressed. I feel like so many of the teams that I thought had big promise really didn't perform very well. And I was really, as I said, going into the weekend, very overwhelmed looking at a bunch of different teams. And so I wanted to narrow it down so that I'm going to follow 3 teams. My Cardinals, because I love them, and the Broncos and the Eagles, mainly because I have resources to tap into if I have questions. I feel like I fit with those 3 teams, but I have to say, I was shocked at the Eagles and that score at the end of the game, and I was a little disappointed with the Broncos too. Maybe not as much with the Broncos as I was with the Eagles, but yeah, it was not as exciting as my Cardinals.
Well, the Cardinals really made a lot of noise with that victory over the San Francisco 49ers. That's a team we talked about last week, that they always play the 49ers tough and play just well enough to lose but cover the spread. Well, they blocked a punt. They changed the momentum of the game. They have a great running quarterback in Kyler Murray, and he's throwing to DeAndre Hopkins, their big offseason acquisition. And that looks like a very good team, the Cardinals. Now, we talk about their numbers. When you look at them for this week, because you're following them, if you like the Cardinals, I would say put a little something on them early in the week, because this week they're giving 6.5 points was the last I had seen to the Washington football team. You want to be giving 6.5 as opposed to 7.
Okay.
As soon as that number moves to 7, that's a big area where there's a push, because many games can land on 7. So if you're the team getting points, you're hoping that goes out to 7 and you can make the bet there. That's what I did with them last week. It went up to 7. If you're the team laying points with the Cardinals, try to get something in at 6.5.
What is? I don't understand laying versus giving.
Okay, laying points means that the Cardinals are a 6.5 point favorite this week, so they have to win by 6.5 points in order for your bet to come in. But if that number goes to 7, you'll still be laying or giving 7 points. You're the 7-point favorite, but now that's a full touchdown. A lot of action happens between the numbers 6.5 and 7. So if you're the favorite, you want to get your action down. You want to make your bet when your team is a 6.5-point favorite rather than a 7-point favorite.
But if it's an underdog, then I want it to be at 7.
Yes, that's what I did last week with the Cardinals. I waited. It was 6.5. I put it in. We didn't need it, but at that time, that was a good little insurance policy.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. So if I'm betting the favorite, so the Cardinals are the favorite this weekend, if I decide to bet the Cardinals as a favorite, I should bet earlier in the week, whereas if they're an underdog, I should bet later in the week?
Or you bet when you think you get the number you like.
Okay.
Like if it goes from 6.5 to 7. Anytime if you're an underdog, you say, I like that, I'm taking a full touchdown. But when something is near that 6.5 to 7 number, but you've got a lot of bettors waiting. They're tentatively probing to see where that goes, because that's a big number in the football sense. It's with the 2-point conversion, not as many games land on 7 as they used to, but there's still that fear for bettors that it will land on 7. And so if you're laying that number, or you try to, if it wins by 7, now you got a half-point victory. So that's a key line to take a look at.
I'm going to look at the Cardinals and bet early if I like what I see. To be honest, I liked what I saw on the field this past week. I didn't watch, I should have, this is a good lesson, I should have watched the Washington football team more closely, knowing that the Cardinals were playing them this week.
Guess who watched it? Guess who watched all the games last Sunday? I can tell you what you wanted to know about it.
So I'll take a look at Arizona and Washington. What about my Broncos?
The Broncos had a nice situation if you were betting last week from both sides. Because of the popularity of newfound casino action and online gambling in Colorado, Denver was getting so much support. The Broncos, when we were talking last week, they were a 1.5-point favorite. So if you liked Tennessee, which I did, you could bet Tennessee last week. But then by game time Monday night, the Broncos were a 3.5-point underdog. That's a major flip. And then a lot of people then took Denver. A lot of people won that game twice. They won early with Tennessee because they got good odds. And then they won late with Denver because Denver only lost by 2 points and they were getting 3.5.
Wow.
So that's the concept we talked about last week about when to bet. We talked about betting a little bit early and then a little bit late. Well, if you did it and you lucked out last week, you could have won that game twice, which some bettors did. And that was what they called a middle in the old days of sports betting, and the books hated it.
They play Steelers this weekend.
The thing about the Steelers is they don't make many mistakes. And they capitalized on a team that did last night in the New York Giants. The Giants had a 19-play drive, and then they threw an interception at the end of it, and they just folded up like accordions, and the Steelers were a veteran team. They took advantage of that. So with Ben Roethlisberger back, that's the key for Pittsburgh. He missed a lot of time last week. They've got speedy outside receivers, and they have very good speed at skill positions, and they play good fundamental football. So that's the scouting report on the Steelers. And the Broncos, they played the Titans tough. I mean, they were winning the game at time, and they were ahead in the fourth quarter. So they played just well enough to cover the spread, and they're getting a lot of points this time.
You keep saying, bet the number that feels good to you. I don't know any number that feels good to me.
Now here's what you do. If you're not sure, well, you watch the Broncos game knowing that this is the spread, and then you see how they perform in key situations, you'll get an idea of the character of this team and, in your sense, whether you can trust them going forward. Now, last week, you didn't love a game yet at this time early in the week. This week, you know you already love one game. If you follow that pattern and watch the teams, you're going to get to a spot where in a given week, you'll love or get a good feel for 3 or 4 games. And that's really what you want. Nobody can get a feel for all the games in a week. You want to get a feeling for a handful. If you get a feeling for 3 or 4, that's really good. So I'd say that the Broncos for you are in a little bit of a watch and wait mode. You're evaluating them. And that's a good way to approach that.
Okay. So the next game I'm looking at is the Eagles. So I'm a little sad that I wasn't really impressed with them all that much.
Well, you know what? They really regressed in a way. Carson Wentz, they signed him to a big contract last year, and he threw 2 interceptions that he threw the ball a little too deep and telegraphed where he was looking for it because the Washington football team defender was able to cut in front and make the interception and then give his quarterback a short field. So that game is on Carson Wentz, the quarterback, because when they had a 17-point lead, he did not manage the game well. And then Washington came to life. I do not believe, since you're talking about Washington going against Arizona, I do not believe Kyler Murray will make those kinds of mistakes in this game. I think Carson Wentz made some mistakes. His receivers are not as good as what the Cardinals have. So those mistakes will disappear, and Kyler Murray is a fleet-footed quarterback. So the Eagles will be playing the Los Angeles Rams, who played a very good game against the Dallas Cowboys and beat them to go 1-0. And the Rams are a solid team. So that line has already moved, Kimmy. The Eagles started as favorites, and now they're underdogs.
Yeah, I think it's important until I sort of get a feel for betting the spread. I'd like to try to keep it a little simple.
Here's another thing to consider. Now, if 85% of the people who bet on the Eagles game were wrong, if 76% of the bettors who took the Indianapolis Colts were wrong, they lost the game outright as an 8-point favorite. So basically what you're saying to yourself is that those people, not only did they have feels of the game, but they may have been looking at the numbers and the CBS model, which we played the game 10,000 times already, and here's the result. Well, you can't tell me what number 10,001 will be. So all this information, and that's why I think you internalize it, and then you have to make track of all those numbers. Now, I want to throw something out there to increase your database thread that I picked up from week 1 that you can monitor and your viewers can monitor going forward. What happened last week was that all the teams that had running quarterbacks won their game. I'm talking about the fleet-footed quarterbacks who can score, and they kept the drives alive. So that was Kyler Murray of your Arizona Cardinals. He scored on a 23-yard touchdown when it looked like there was nothing there for him. He made the play. That was the big touchdown. Yeah. Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP, is a phenomenal quarterback and a running quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. He did a great job. Cam Newton went to New England and replaced Tom Brady. He can't pass, but he scored 2 rushing touchdowns, and they're going to pattern the offense around Cam Newton. The Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen. Josh Allen scored a rushing touchdown, and they covered against the New York Jets. There's a pattern here of fast quarterbacks who have an edge over the defense right now and can extend the drives with their feet. So keep an eye on those teams because they keep the ball in their hands, and all those teams all won last week. So keep an eye on those running quarterback teams. That could be a threat.
I liked placing that $5 bet on the Cardinals is because I like betting for the Cardinals. I don't like betting against them, right? As a fan, I don't want to bet against them.
Well, you can hedge that and say if you do not want to bet against your Cardinals, but if you feel that that's where the game may lie that day, take that week off. Don't play it, and maintain your status as a fan. You might get to a point where you decide to go against them, but that might take some time. You may have to break the emotional umbilical cord with that. But there are 16 games every week. You don't have to bet your Cardinals if it's going to put you in a little bit of a tough spot to watch the game. That's okay. Or later on, when we get into more sophisticated things, you could play over-unders. You could say, hey, I don't want to bet against them, but maybe I'll root for the total of the game to go high. And so you can have action on the game regardless of what happens to them. But it's good to know where your bias lies, because you don't want to make bets with your heart, because that's not a good business move.
Okay, I can live with that. I'm going to take a look at those 3 games. I'm going to, at least for my early bets. And then I think I like the approach of sort of reevaluating again Saturday. See what's going on. See how things are moving. Not that I really know what that means quite yet. Like, I know it is where the money's coming. I'm just not sure I know how to interpret it quite yet.
Well, sure. Well, what you could say, now, like, for instance, with your Cardinals, the reason for the 6.5 early bet, if you make it then, is if that line goes up to 7, then there's a good chance that could end up in a tie or a push. If you see that number go down to 5.5 points, then you'll know that the Washington bettors thought that was the deal of a century, and they jumped on that, and they put all the money on that. So you can evaluate it like stock. I liked the Cardinals giving 6.5 points. If that game goes down to 5 points, maybe you like it even more, because basically you maybe just got it on sale. That's the way to look at it. It's like buying stock. And remember, not everybody has the same emotional data for every game and the same feel for every game. I think a good thing to look at the end of each week too is when you watch these games, think, how did this team come out of it? Did they get denied at the end of the game? Should they have won that? Was there a bad break?
Yeah, it's not just the
that
points.
They really could have won this game, because a team that gets a bad break might be due to turn the tables the following week. And that's just one of the little hinging type things that you can't put into a number.
So what else do I need to know for this weekend?
You've got 3 games. You're looking at the 3 games.
Yep.
And watch the quarterback angle, the teams with the mobile quarterback. So that's Buffalo, Arizona, New England. See how they play with their running quarterbacks like that. And also, just as a fan, I want you to enjoy 2 games, and your viewers to enjoy 2 games. One is Sunday night. New England visits Seattle. That's a great game. Spread is 4.5 points that Seattle is giving to New England. And then you're also going to see on Monday night with the New Orleans Saints playing the now Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay, so after some research and some pondering and some, oh my God, what am I going to do? I finally have a plan for this weekend's betting. I'm still not sure how much I'm supposed to be betting, so I need to make sure and ask Dave about amounts and what makes sense. So here's what I've got early in the week. I am putting $20 on the Cardinals at minus 6.5 because they looked good. They're my team, and I think they're going to win. So fingers crossed there. I am veering across from the teams I said I was going to follow, and I'm actually going to put $10 on Baltimore at minus 6.5. I put the $1 bet on them last weekend, and I was sort of impressed. They're really strong, and I think that's a good bet. Again, the amount I'm not so sure about, but that's what I'm doing. And then the only other bet I'm going to make this week is I'm going to take one of my free bets, and I'm going to bet $5 on Kansas City at minus 8.5. Now, I feel that spread, that number is a little high after my conversation with Dave. I was really trying to look for things that I felt were under the 7-point range. But given their performance last week, and I just think that they're going to cover that number. I think that's how you say that. I think they're going to win by more than that. So it's a free bet. I'm taking a risk, but I think if I can do more of these small bets, it's going to help me get my feel for different teams. So that's my early week plan. There might be something that comes up over the weekend that I might add on to that. We'll wait and see. But for now, wish me luck.